Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. This week's episode, Ask Me Almost Anything. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything at Writing for Screens, a channel which is built out of some of the stuff that I had to teach myself in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies. I've tried to gather up the skills and tools and insights that I had to figure out for myself, put them into some little lesson videos, which are all here 24/7 for free for you. So those are here on my channel page. If you go down to the bottom, you will see this little screen grab of the page. Here's a close-up of the playlists. The first three playlists are extremely important. They are everything I ever thought of that I could tell you guys, broken down into little 10-minute lessons. Each lesson has a thumbnail and a title which tells you what it's about. Genre, flashbacks, character, dialogue, anything that I've got to say, I tried to put here into these little 10-minute lessons. They are full of ideas for you to try out for yourself, because here is the biggest lesson I have to teach. Every artist must make their own path. I cannot tell you what you should or shouldn't do. I can tell you things that I've tried and why they didn't work. I can tell you what other people are doing and why it does or doesn't work. But the main thing is everybody has to figure out what kind of work they want to do, what kind of skills they do and don't have naturally, what kind of techniques that they love or feel good at. Each one of those things is going to be different for everyone, and you have to figure out for yourself what it is that will get you where you're trying to go. There is not one path to creative success. There is not one definition of success. There is certainly no formula for what an artist should or shouldn't do. There is no formula for what a movie should or shouldn't do. So I'm trying not to give you some kind of pat answer, because that is a sure sign of creative misery and death. You got to figure it out for yourself. You got to try. You got to do it and see where you can and can't go. Find out where the opportunities are for you, because they're different for everyone. So here's what I'm going to do today. I'm just leaving it open for everybody. So let me do a couple of quick hellos. Hello, Meaning Bites. Hi, Jean at her ward, and Donna down under. Hello, I do not know your name, but hello. And Ricky, good to see you. Okay, so here's the deal, guys. And there's 10 other people watching who have not said hello, which is fine. Lurk all you want. But I got no topic today. I am going to just leave it open. Ask your questions. Let me see what I can tell you. I'll do the best I can. Just a little note, which I'm going to put out a little video about this later this afternoon anyway, but there will be no live streams in August. I'm going to be taking some time to focus on my own work and to take a little bit of summer off. So I will be back on September 4th after today's episode. But in the meantime, I'm here. I'm ready. Ask me anything. Almost. Hello, Doreen. You are welcome, Madco. Madco says, thanks for this invaluable free content. You are a hero to screenwriters. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I don't know if I am a hero. I am simply trying to tell you what I know, because I just remember so well struggling to figure out how to do this business and how to do this art, because it is an obscure and narrow and strange art, the art of writing for screens or making things for screens. So therefore, I just thought, if somebody had told me stuff a long time ago, there's a lot I wouldn't have listened to, actually. You have to figure it out for yourself. But I am trying to offer up stuff that I think is not otherwise being said. No point in my saying the same stuff everybody else is saying. If I don't say it, it could be because just there's a lot of other people saying it. Hi, TT and Pedro's lurking. Hello. Pedro Santos is lurking, which is completely fine. Hi, Michael. and Ishaj. Okay, Meaning Bites. Wondering how you know if your screenplay story has enough dramatic action. That's a good question. That's an interesting question. Because the answer essentially is it has enough if when you are working on it and read through what you're writing, it's interesting. You know, if you're finding yourself writing a story that seems to be moving, then it probably does have enough dramatic action. The only way you can really tell if you might have a blind spot, it's true. But I think the way I answer it is just to ask myself with every single scene, and I'm doing this with my novel now, so I know because it's a lot harder because there's like 4 times as many scenes. But I go through each scene and I say, does this have an action? What's the action? How am I going to write it? Because for me, I don't know how to write a scene without writing the action. I used to write a lot of stuff that didn't have action, and I was always very frustrated because it was beautiful writing. I would write, theoretical things or static things, and it bothered me that people didn't get how great it was. But the truth is, it wasn't action. And one of the things I had to learn was make sure that everything that's going on, everything you're pointing the camera at and asking the actors to do is some form of dramatic action. If you find an answer that's, yes, there's an action here, even if that action is someone privately making a decision while other people are deciding what to order at lunch, that's cool. There's an action there, and you have to figure out how to describe it. Maybe they're not participating in the order or whatever it is. You're going to have to figure out how to indicate for a visual and acting-oriented medium something that's going on in someone's head. But that's a scene. There's an action there. If someone is neglecting their social moment because they are making a decision, that's an action. So the answer is simply, the question, by the way, for those of you who missed it, how do you know if your story or screenplay has enough dramatic action? There's no number. There's no right or wrong. The answer is almost everything that happens. You have to ask yourself, is it an action? Or is it an essay or a debate or something that's not moving the characters in any way? Now and then you have a scene that isn't an action. That's cool. I personally find them almost impossible to write. I don't know what to say. So that's, for me, the answer is, do I know what the scene is about? Do I know how to write this? And if the answer is yes, you probably have enough action. Hi, Thumper. Have you written a synopsis of your novel yet? Not really. I find a synopsis is a synopsises treatments are ugly things. I can do it if I'm required, but I don't. But there's no value to it for me as a writer. What's valuable to me is an outline, which is very different from a synopsis. Synopsis is sort of a prose, condensed retelling of the story, but the outline is a breakdown moment by moment of what you're going to be writing. I don't have a use for a synopsis. I may need one later, when I'm trying to sell it, but that's actually a different thing. A synopsis for sales is a sales document. It's a promotional item, and so I would rather write that when it's done. I think that sometimes people tell you need to write a synopsis before you write something. That is not true. Very often producers ask you to write a synopsis before they will hire you to write something, but that's different. That's a job. They are basically saying, we need some proof that this is a story that we like. So the answer is, have I written a synopsis of my novel yet? No, because I hate synopsises. Okay. Is it any good to brute force to write? Often yes. Here's what I would say. The thing that you don't want to do is brute force without a good direction to go in. If you're just brute forcing yourself, but you're not heading in the direction of the finished work, that's hard. It's just you can find yourself just go, first of all, going in the wrong direction. And one of the things about brute force is sometimes you're getting a signal from your brain that you're not going in the right direction. So you don't want to brute force through that because you're missing the point. The point is you need to stop and rethink something. If it's not flowing, if you're not, there's an element of brute force to every day, to every day opening the document and say, I'm going to write some more. What I have found is if you make it a ritual to open the document and do a little something, one sentence every day, you won't need to brute force because you'll get involved. You'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy the process, especially if you only do a little at a time, because that way you don't have you don't have all the problems that come with burning out, overdoing. There's a natural inclination to keep writing when you're writing well. So you pay attention to why you have to brute force. On the other hand, sometimes why you have to brute force is you're afraid, which could be illegitimate. You could be afraid because you have fear, but not afraid the thing that you're writing is actually fine. If you're having to brute force because you are distracted or unfamiliar with the writing process, a little bit of brute force isn't a bad thing. To say, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to, I don't usually work well with I have to do it every day at 10 a.m. or I have to do it, but if I just say, open the document and do whatever small specific piece you can do, that helps. That to me is worth doing. Brute forcing misery is not always good. If you're really miserable, just do a teeniest step and then set it aside. Okay. Let's see. Well, you're one of my heroes because I was very lost before I found you on an interview that you did. But since then, you've really helped me to learn the foundation. Yay! Okay, praise for me. I will never stop liking that. But the main thing is honestly, what I most like about that is that you are finding it easier to write because of things I offered. There is no gain here. As I have said before, if I could have done this in some way where I was not visible, if I could have figured out a technological avatar that would allow me to communicate fairly relaxedly and without a lot of effort, because that's what this is, it's just me sitting down and talking, I would have. I do not particularly want to be present here, but I do really, really like the subject. I like talking about this stuff. Can't accomplish any writing with force to write. It's quite difficult to keep going on. Okay, let's talk about some things I've already done that may help you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about a couple of videos I've done on this topic of not being able to get writing without brute force. I will put the links to these videos in the description below this video after we're done. About 10 minutes after we're done, those links will appear. But in the meantime, just let me tell you a couple of things that might help. The first thing is, honestly, everything in these 3 playlists. Please look at these lessons. They are very, very useful, if I do say so myself. Here's a good one. Create a ritual. I think this is a good, helpful one. When you're having trouble with that. Also, small steps. That's a biggie. And then I think fear of writing, because whether you know it or not, there probably is some fear involved in not feeling comfortable doing the process. So I would suggest those 3 videos to start. I really get into the details of what can be done to deal with the reluctance to sit down and write. Okay. I'm curious if abstract expressionism is your favorite type of art and that is part of your pull to the story. That is a good question. The answer is no. I really like a lot of different art, but abstract expressionism really wasn't. I mean, it's cool. I've always liked it, but it actually didn't have the strongest pull on me. I really like old 18th and 19th century illustration art. I love the Hudson River painters. I love um, uh, uh, I love a lot of different people. I love the Impressionists, and so there's a lot of different art that I like. What I thought was interesting was how much abstract expressionism changed the world, in that our understanding of what art was or was for was radically opened up. And things that I grew up as commonplace, you would see abstract art everywhere. Just it was on products, it's on posters on people's walls. It was, abstract art became an acceptable form of creative action. But honestly, it was not at all about the art of that time. It was about the artists of that time. Because as I've mentioned, the reason I thought of this story at all was just I was reading a biography of Jackson Pollock because it was a big popular biography 20, 30 years ago. And there was a description of what it was like for artists the day in August 1935 when the federal government started putting artists on the payroll. And that sort of got me thinking, but really my interest is about being an artist, not that particular type of art. Okay. Michael says, some movies have two endings. It misdirects the audience, like Spellbound. What do you think? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure entirely what you mean by, I don't remember Spellbound well enough to remember the ending, actually. But two endings, usually they come sequentially, and I always think of the last ending as the real ending. So therefore, my answer would be, I don't think that they have two endings. I think they have one. But it is, let me know. If you ask me about a movie I've seen recently, I'll be able to help you. I just don't remember Spellbound. Clue is different. Okay, something where you have alternate endings, that's a different case. For instance, famously Clockwork Orange. The movie has one ending, but the book has a different ending, and the book actually had several different endings because he published different versions of it. So therefore, in that, if there's a case of something which legitimately has different endings in different versions, that's a whole other concept of storytelling. I don't mind it. I tend to need the ending to be meaningful. I tend to need the ending to define the story. So if there's two different endings, it's essentially two different stories as far as I'm concerned then. If there's two different endings in one story, like sequentially, that doesn't raise the question. If there's two different versions with two different endings, that's different. Great Expectations had that too, the book. Mad says, when you were a young screenwriter, who was your Glenn Gers? That's one of the most frustrating things. There was almost no one. When I was a young screenwriter, it was in the late 70s, early 1980s, and there was almost zero screenwriting information. There was a book by a man named Browdy called, which was Interviews with Screenwriters on Screenwriting. I can't remember. But Brady, maybe. But that book had a bunch of interviews with classic Hollywood screenwriters like Ernest Lehman. And I read that. And then there was William Goldman's book came out in the early 1980s, Adventures in the Screen Trade. So William Goldman was probably my Glenn Gers. Sid Field also. Sid Field did a book called Screenplay. It was the first how to write screenplays book that I knew of, certainly, in the early 1980s. That was great. I still like that book. I think it's good. If you're looking for the basics of Hollywood formula, that's where you'll find it. Screenplay by Sid Field, S-Y-D. But really, it was William Goldman. And William Goldman, before his book came out, they had published a paperback edition of the screenplay of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is an extraordinary screenplay as far as I'm concerned. It's amazing. And it was fascinating because he published the script and he wrote in the introduction to it that he did not know how to write a script. He did not know how to format a script when he wrote it. So therefore, he explains that he just sort of wrote it in the best way he could. And unfortunately, he then created this mythology of the cut to, which I think is a real waste of time and space. Cut to over on the right-hand side. So therefore, William Gold, but I read the script of Butch Cassidy. I got that paperback and I read the story of how he got hired to do it. Well, he didn't get hired to do that, but how he got hired to do another script, and that allowed him to sell Butch Cassidy, which was legendary at the time because it was the most expensive original screenplay payday of that era. Okay. When it comes to brute force to write, I think of it as just sitting down and just paying devotion to the muse. That helps. Yeah, whatever gets you through. Some people, excuse me. I think if you're feeling brute force, because it depends on what you're brute forcing against, really. If you're thinking, oh, this isn't good enough, or oh, I'm bad, or oh, I don't know how to do it, those are reasons to, I don't believe brute force, actually. I believe structuring your process. That's really the deal. If you can structure your process, and that's why I talk about this in the Create a Ritual. Create a Ritual video. It doesn't matter what the structure is, as long as it is a easily repeatable structure that works for you. I talk in that video about some of the weird different structures that people have. Nabokov famously wrote his entire novels on index cards. Ernest Hemingway said always stop when you're in the middle of something that you know where it's going, so that when you pick it up the next day, you can get into it. Maybe yes, maybe no. The main thing is everybody has their own system that works for them, depending on what it is. I know one person who really needs to go out to coffee shops. I would hate going out to a coffee shop to write, but he goes to the same coffee shop. He writes by hand on a yellow pad. I also would not be able to do that. First of all, I would never be able to read what I had written because my handwriting is terrible. Second of all, it would hurt my hand. I don't know what I would have done if they had not invented word processing. It certainly helped me. Anyway, everybody's way is different. What I would say is what's most important is not brute forcing it, but creating a rhythm, a ritual, a familiarity. The idea is, what kind of writing are you doing? Are you planning out your story, or are you actually writing the text? Different types of writing sometimes need different ways of going about it. Okay. The screenwriting step-by-step is great. Okay, yes. Okay, thank you. That's why I did that. I couldn't think of a good way to explain what it is I do and what I think people have to do, which is you find your way as you go. That's why I outline, so that I can find my way, and then when I'm writing, I have to find new details, but at least I know the track I'm on. So anyway, for those of you who want to understand the process I've used for scripts, the screenwriting step-by-step playlist, it's about 260 episodes in which I show you literally from having a 2 or 3 sentence idea, every step. I did not work on it except when the camera was on. So if you want to see it, it's there. Also, Ricky says, and this is true, you could try replacing brute force with a reward. Write for 10 minutes and have chocolate. Yeah, that would be mine. Rewards are crucial. Also, I did do a video that might help called Getting Stuck or Lost. Because if you feel like you have to brute force, you are probably stuck or lost. You're afraid. You are uncertain. Whatever it is, that video, and once again, I will put the links to these videos I'm mentioning in the description about 10 minutes after I sign off. But yeah, Getting Stuck or Lost talks a lot about what to do when you feel like you have to brute force because you don't know how to get through it. The answer is brute force may work. I do talk in that video about how to a certain extent you have to force yourself. You have to force yourself to sit down. You have to force yourself to do the work. You shouldn't have to force yourself too much to write the words. But sometimes you do. You know, I find myself saying, okay, just what is this scene about? What, like in the most basic version, how can I force myself to get a couple of sentences down? Once you do that, you tend to start to think, oh, I could expand that sentence. I could move that sentence. I could cut that sentence. Anyway, you're welcome, Doreen. Yeah. TT says, I enjoy seeing different POVs. You mean different points of view on how we write, I think. I enjoy seeing different POVs on everything. So I agree with that. Donna asks, what writing, movie or series, really sparked your imagination and wowed you recently, inspiring you as a writer and opening your mind with either its concept or beauty? I always panic when I'm asked this question. I always immediately forget what I have seen recently and what I have liked. And then like the next day I'll say, oh yeah, I do that. I should probably keep a list. I'm sorry. I'm just, as soon as someone says, like, what have you watched recently? I blank out. I actually have to write it down. Like I keep a list of what I've watched. So that's, I also watch a lot of bad stuff. I watch a lot of stuff that's like, it's interesting to me, but I wouldn't say anyone else should watch it. I learn by watching all sorts of different things, but I wouldn't say people should have to watch the things I watch. Oh, I'm not quite done with, but far enough that I can say it's great, is The Underground Railroad by, it's based on a novel by Colson Whitehead, and it's directed by Barry Jenkins, a series of different writers for the 10 episodes. It's a series on Amazon, also currently in the Criterion Collection streaming service. The Underground Railroad, very artsy, it's a 10-hour indie film, lots of long, slow silences. Barry Jenkins also likes to do this thing where if he's doing a scene, he will be filming one person and then he will pan to the other instead of a cut, which adds a lot of time to your movie, but it has an interesting effect of binding us in the place, in the moment, because cutting is an illusion. Although our minds cut. Anyway, so I would say The Underground Railroad is terrific. I've probably seen the stuff I think was great and I just can't remember it offhand, and I apologize. Okay. Hi, Ming. Now I know who you are. I hadn't gotten in the screenwriting step-by-step where you start your first draft there. So when and how do the first draft? Okay, good question. The answer is different, once again, different for different people. I feel like I want to wait until my outline is solid. All right, I'm gonna do a little screen share here. Bada boom, bada bing. Okay, so currently, here's, let me see. See, currently I'm trying to move my outline into the text. So here's what I got going. Over on the side, you can see I've got these notes. You can sort of see them there. Those are my outline at the moment. And what I'm trying to do is make sure for every single scene, like here's a scene, and this, I've got all these notes in the side, and this one, I've got all these, this one, I was like, I really don't know about this scene. So I've written in pink, this has to be answered. I have to figure it out. In this one, there's a small pink section. So what I'm doing with all that is, all right. So you can see that, like, I'm asking myself questions. So then the answer becomes when my outline doesn't have any questions in it, when I've at least made a choice for each scene about what I think it's going to be. That doesn't have to last. It doesn't have to be but if I have a complete list of every scene, that's what an outline is. For those of you who don't know about how and why I outline, let me give you 2 other videos. Why, how, outline. Okay, there's why outline and how to outline. Okay, so what I do is I break the story down into one item, one section of my outline for every scene. And for those of you who don't know what I mean by scenes, there is a very important video, Think in Scenes. As you can tell, I really mean this. Someone was making fun of me today. I said, I'm going to do the live stream. And they said, why are you doing the live stream? You already said, you have said everything you have to say in your videos, in your lesson videos. I know, and I'm sorry, but that's what I'm going to keep pointing you back to. I have said everything I have to say in the best possible way I know to say it in these lesson videos, in the first 3 playlists: Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. Okay, that's 50 videos, each one about 10 minutes. That's where I try and answer everything I know. So what I'm trying to tell you about this, like how do I know when I'm ready? When I have gone through every scene and I feel like I understand what the main thing that's happening in that scene. And then I have to ask myself, to me, I have to answer a lot of questions. Like today, this morning, working on the novel, I had a scene where Billy, one of the main characters in this love triangle, she has tried to help her love, Charlie, who's a painter, who's going broke. And Billy has a lot of money, but Charlie won't take any of her money. So she has tried to sort of scam some money over to Charlie by routing it through another person, Tom. Tom is in love with Billy. So this scam has gone wrong, and Billy needs to talk to Tom about it. So there's a scene, and I know that they have to take a walk and she has to talk about how things have gone wrong and how distressed she is. And originally I thought this would be such a great scene for them to have, like, take a walk in the park, in Central Park in New York. Casual, there's privacy in Central Park in various spots, but it's not like she wouldn't have a private meeting. But I realized it takes place in December, and there's no way that they would sit on a bench in the park in December in New York. It's too cold. So I just spent a little while in that single step of the outline saying, where could they meet? Very small, specific question. I ran through some possibilities. They could go to a restaurant or a bar, but that seemed too much like a date. I don't think she would have done that. Then I thought, would it be at her workplace? No. Would it be at her home? No. Certainly wouldn't go to his place. Then I realized that the Museum of Natural History in New York is a great place to hide out from the elements. It's dark. It's sort of exotic and fascinating. And it was around in the 1930s. So now I know how to write that scene because I know where it takes place and I know what she's trying to do. She is trying to have a conversation. She's going to kind of break down to him. And then he is going to impulsively hug her, and it's going to lead them to kissing, and then she regrets it. That's what the scene is. Okay, now I have that scene. When I have that sort of clarity for each scene, I know what's happening in the scene, then I feel I'm ready to write the draft because I know I won't get lost having them do something that's out of the flow of the story. Because that's the problem, is that when you're writing, you can just sort of follow a track of, oh, this is cool, or oh, I know how to do this. And it's out of the track of the characters in their story. So I go through every single scene and I say, what are these characters doing? Oh, the other thing that might help is a video called Building Character Arcs. Also talks about figuring out what each character is doing. So that's when I know I'm ready to start the draft, is if I can go through every scene and say, I know what's supposed to happen here and what the characters think they are trying to do, what they're feeling, what they're seeing in the moment for themselves. That's just a little note. It's not a whole big thing. But if I have that for every scene, then I am ready to write a rough draft. When I write a rough draft, I'm going to encounter 1,000 unexpected problems. I'm going to answer them the best I can. Then I'm going to have to do the whole thing over again. I'm going to look at what I did right, and I'm going to say what works and what doesn't. So that's the answer for me. Some people, they write the first draft and then they outline it. They figure it out later. They figure it out as they go along. Whatever works for you. I just feel so lost and insecure and frightened if I don't have a plan. That's why I have a plan. It's not that I think you need a plan. I need a plan because I get scared and I just have too many choices. I can think of too many possible things. And also I'll just think of things that are expedient in the moment. I'll say, she's gonna talk about this or that. But the point of this scene was to talk about Charlie. Okay. Hi, Pelicans. Ricky is exactly right as far as I'm concerned. Whatever you need to do to keep writing, as long as it is not harmful to you or people around you, as long as you can healthily do it, the answer is try that. Hello, Wolf. Okay, Michael asks, when writing genre, is it important to borrow elements from other films? Am I stealing? The answer is, depending on how specific the element is, yes. But how much of it could be are you stealing if you take, in the Maltese Falcon, if you were to have a whole other movie where somebody's got a Maltese Falcon, that would be stealing, yes. If you are just taking elements like, the femme fatale or the foggy night or the murder of the partner or any number of other elements that you found in genre pieces, if you do your version of that, you are not stealing. You should do that. You should do it to the extent that it fits your vibe and vision. The important thing is, yes, you should use the elements, the qualities, the stuff of your genre. And if you do that, you're definitely going to overlap with other things in that genre. That's the pleasure of genre. Sometimes you flip it around, since serial killer things tend to be, sort of dark and claustrophobic and isolation. If you want to do a serial killer thing out in the middle of the desert where there's nothing but sunlight and sand and a couple of, palm trees, that would be a cool thing. There's no reason that you have to stick to the cliches, but do understand why the cliches are working and see what your version of the cliche is. I did a horror movie called Jane. I believe it's there's a inside the script, behind the script episode in my live streams. For me, it was a runaway kids lost in the woods being hunted by something scary. But I made the woods downtown Los Angeles. I made the woods unusual. The idea of the streets at night being like the woods that you get lost in, I thought that was my version of that, but it's still the same cliche. Okay. Nishaj says, writing is such an intimate art. A lot of the time I sit down and I try to write, but I find myself not writing anything. And then when I do, it's a few lines. I don't know if it's a procrastination or what, but that is my issue. I try to outline my stories, but that seems to be difficult because I try to write by scenes. Honestly, I just feel all over the place. Do you have anything that could help me focus better? Truthfully, I would say outline. I would say, the only thing I can say is usually when you present a problem, the answer is in the problem. What you're saying is, for instance, I try to write, but I find myself not writing anything. And then when I do, it's a few lines. The answer is try to, when you write something, even if it is just a few lines. If you write a few lines every day, you will eventually have a big pile of lines, and then you can start to craft it as you need. But if you're saying you feel all over the place, the only answer I know to that is to have an outline. The other answer is write all over the place, then read what you wrote and reorganize and rewrite it then. That's also a perfectly fair way to take on that problem. Whatever gets you comfortably to continue writing. If you are, it sounds to me like you're judging yourself. You're saying, I don't like that this, when you say it's all over the place, maybe that's good. You have to, I don't know what it's like. I don't know if it's hard to follow, but the thing is, maybe you should write an all over the place project. And then when it's done, read it and see if you can all over the place it. You can organize it after it's written. Sometimes that's what you got to do. Hi, Doxyloop. Hello from Argentina. Hello to Argentina. Sorry about that. My novel is going well. Thank you. I really want you to read. And hello to Doxyloop in Argentina. The answer is on my live streams. If you go down to the playlist which has live streams, and I will be making a separate playlist for this soon. I have been doing a series of reports from the front about writing my novel. It's called Writing My Novel, so you can see them right there. And I think there's 16 episodes of it so far. So you can keep track of where I am about the novel. My guess is that it won't be done until around this time next year. I mean, I hope to have a draft of it done by the holidays. I don't think anyone else will get to read it till the fall of next year, because it takes a long time and because it takes a long time to actually get it out there. But the answer is I'm really enjoying it. I'm having fun recognizing that I do not know what I'm doing entirely, but exploring how to solve that problem. And I talk about that in detail in these Writing My Novel live streams. I hope you'll check them out. Okay. Part 1. I don't agree with this way of thinking, but I know controversy can arise when a writer writes something that depicts the lived experience of another group or minority. Did you get any pushback when writing Disfigured, a film about women and issues with body image? That is a good question. I'm going to say yes. Things have changed recently in that the subject of whether or not it is inappropriate for someone to write outside of their own lived experience, and I'm not going to say I understand the argument. Certainly, if you're writing about a group who is not properly represented, fairly represented in the culture of publishing or movies, and you are writing about them, you may be taking their place, and that's not good. I didn't particularly feel like women and weight issues was a topic that only women could write about. As far as I was concerned, the issue of body image is something I feel like we all deal with, and I happened to think of this story, and I tried my best to A, research, and B, imagine as honestly as possible. I did not get any pushback on that, interestingly. I did get pushback on some of the specific things that happened in the story, particularly about the issue of fat acceptance. Some people feel very strongly for or against fat acceptance. I was sort of questioning various issues within it without, I mean, obviously fat acceptance, body acceptance of any kind, I am in favor of. What I did get a lot of is people saying, gosh, I didn't think a man wrote it, which I believe is the goal that we are all trying to get to, which is when you write about other people, you are doing your best to imagine them authentically for your feelings and understanding of life. Sometimes that can go horribly wrong, but you still need to do it as authentically to you as possible. I personally wish that that things were not necessarily jumped on, but allowed to be, because I've said this, there's a whole video I did on the question of contest versus library, in the sense that I believe the world of creative art should be open to all sorts of things, even if they are failed or bad or mistaken or only partially working. They're still worth having. And that's what a library is for me. A library is full of stuff, some of which, is inaccessible to me, some of which is of no interest to me, but I want it to be there. So the answer is, I personally did not get pushback, partly because times were different and people were not pushing back as hard. But I also do feel proud that that people at the time felt like it was, they were surprised a man wrote it. And I like that. That made me feel like I had, women mainly, came to me and said, wow, I did not understand that you were a man. I thought, before I knew, I thought it was a woman. We do the best we can on this, case by case. I do know that you do have to think about whether or not you are taking someone's place. In my case, I'm not successful enough to take anybody's place. Disfigured was a tiny little movie. It didn't bump anyone else's slot from the studio. We are always imagining our characters. Our characters are always not us, and they are always, in part, if you've done it well, us. Roxane Gay, speaking about this issue, put it as well as I could think of, which is, she said, it's not that you shouldn't write about other people. You shouldn't write other people badly. That's, if you are writing in cliches or stereotypes, if you are writing with hostility or condescension, then yes, you probably are not going to do a good job, and you probably should be criticized for that. That's my take. Hi, Wolf Powers. My live streams, your live streams, are invigorating to me as a writer. Putting of questions in scenes is a really valuable technique. It helped me a lot. Yes, me too. I have to tell you that talking about this stuff to you all has helped me to remember to do this stuff when I'm writing for myself. I think I would not be able to write my novel, which is very intimidating, because I'm just in over my head, if I hadn't spent so many years trying to explain to you guys what I think you should do if you get in over your head. So I had those rules in my head. If you get in over your head, ask questions, make a list of things to do, write a bad version of it. All of those things are helping me. So I try and share them. Thank you. Thank you, Meaning Bites, for once again, another supportive statement. Your friend must not realize how much it means to us that you answer our questions directly. Also, it's bringing interest for your book. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Doreen. I didn't want to say it, although I do often say it. But the truth is, indeed, I am partly doing these live streams to stir up an audience for the eventual work I am going to be publishing. Yeah, thank you, Love the Museum, for their meeting in that scene I was talking about. Why was Fargo so popular? There's an interesting question, Sanchez. Pablo, didn't you used to be Pablo Sanchez? Do you mean the movie or the show? The movie was popular partly because it's really good, but also because it was a little slice of comic tragedy in a world that had not been portrayed. So therefore it was both exotic and entertaining. And the Coen brothers are also really good at what they do. So it was a good story with great scenes, unexpected twists. The main thing about the movie Fargo, and in many ways the series too, is the idea of how people come together in their foolish endeavors, and each one makes terrible mistakes which become tragic because of the inability to recognize the other people's realities and needs. It's just a good insight into life. Marge is an amazing character, and so she balances out all the venal and selfish and violent other people. So I think that's why Fargo was popular, the movie. And then the series was popular because I think Noah Hawley took that concept and said, let me do variations on that. I think we're up to 5 variations, 5 different. It's always the same thing. There's a world, a somewhat obscure or ill uncovered world. There's usually a topic of some sort. And within that, he tries to set people on their agendas, and their agendas create catastrophic, violent, funny collisions, which reveal truths about character. That's why I think it's popular. Yay! Hi, Imogen. Nice to see you. Hello, Pennywise. Despite your, if we take out the space, you have a frightening name, but I am very glad to see you. Susan, hello. Speaking of stealing, I'm working on a spec set in a real location where they do haunted tours. Can I use real ghost stories to set the mood, or would that be considered taking IP? It depends. When you say real ghost stories, are they copyrighted? Like, did somebody write a real ghost story? Or are you talking about stories that have been reported in the news as real ghosts? Or do you mean just things that people have told each other that are real? Like in that a real person told a real person this ghost story, which may or may not be real. The answer is simply this. If it is published and copyrighted in the last 75 years, you cannot use it. If you are using things that you got off a source like the internet, I don't know the legal ramifications of that, and this is not legal advice. I would say check that, but my guess is that if you heard a story, a ghost story from someone, do some research, do some searching, see if there is a copyrighted version of that. That would be a problem. Otherwise, no, it seems like you can use a real ghost story. It depends. Like like the Amityville horror, it was based on a true case, so that may be something that's open to reinterpretation because there are multiple news sources on this. On the other hand, if you're writing about real people who are alive, as the Amity people may be, you may have life rights issues. So the answer is, it's if you're set in a real location where they do haunted tours, I personally would make up a fake one. That's what I would do. Just make it safe. Make it something you own. Also, that means you own it. You can copyright it. It's to your advantage. If it is a famous legend, if it's the Salem witch trials or something, you probably could do it. But once again, not legal advice. What should I do when I have Hi, Glenn Sland Club, which is unnerving. What should I do when I have the idea, know what the concept is, but I have no idea what genre it is? First thing, obviously, is you should look at my genre video. I would say you got to be near to some video, some genre. The genre might just be drama, or it could be that you're mixing 2 genres, or you're doing like comic horror. That's still a horror movie, but it's a subdivision. Funny horror movies. If at very worst you got something that has something, no things that it is like. That's the way you find out what genre it is. You say, what's it like? What genre is that? So the answer is, if you can't think of anything that this is like, just say it's an indie. Then the question is comedy or drama. There you go. Indie comedy, indie drama. That's about all I can say without knowing more. But the odds are there is a genre. There are things that it is like, and that's how you because it's a genre is in that sense a marketing issue. Hello, Farha. Do you have any experience with writing magic power systems? As in, is that like a D&D kind of thing? I'm not sure what magic power systems are. So I don't have any tips. If you let me know a little bit more, and by the way, no more questions. I'm not going to get to all of them as it is. But let me know, Farha, what you mean by that. Why a movie like Chinatown, Path to Glory, have a very dark ending, but are considered one of the greatest movies ever? Paths of Glory and Chinatown are considered great movies because things don't have to have a happy ending. Most serious work has an unhappy ending, or often does. That often is considered a mark of seriousness, or it was for a long time. And the answer would be, you don't have to have a happy ending. A dark ending can illuminate a human truth. It can show us the things that we fear and let us experience them and cathartically feel them without actually having a true tragedy in our lives. So the answer is, why not? What's wrong with a dark ending? Something interesting always develops in these live streams, the dynamic of random ideas coming together, and Glenn expertly fielding it all. Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate that. What do you think some writing teacher promoting 36 dramatic situations, claiming there are only 36 situations in any story form? With all categories of, here, I did a video on this. Okay. My answer would be, if it helps you, that's great. Some people say all stories are only 3 stories: person against person, person against nature, person against themselves. My point about these is, does it help you write? Like, if I know that my story is person against person and not person against nature, that doesn't help me that much. The 36 dramatic situations, I'm just not sure how it helps me. The question is, what do you do with those situations? So the answer is, usually these theories, these formulae of like, I am going to tell you the rules. They are only helpful if they are not just putting things in categories for the pleasure of categorizing or judging, but if they are putting things in categories because the category reveals something useful. For instance, if they said, in this situation, you always have to have, this event. My problem is, always never going to happen. There's no rule that you can't find some great breaking of. There's no artistic rule that applies to everything. However, the rules might be helpful. I don't believe that, to me, understanding the 36 categories of situation just is something for a critic to do. It's for an academic to do. I don't see how it helps you to write. I guess that what you could do is like go through your script and say, do I have, which situation is this? It doesn't seem useful to me. It's not helping. It doesn't help me. If it helps you, use it. But I just don't see the value of it to figuring out your new story. If somebody is telling you that all stories fit the same pattern, they are, first of all, wrong. And second of all, narrowing your ability to write something original or interesting or authentic. And I think that's bad. So I would say, use the formula as a jumping off point to what you think is good, what you find interesting or powerful. But that usually means breaking some of those rules. Thumper says, stuff can only be stolen so many times before it stops being theft, unless you are the only one doing it. Yes, that is absolutely true. Like at this point, two siblings, one of whom is on the right side of the law and one of whom is on the wrong side of the law. That's been, essentially it's Cain and Abel, one of the 36 situations maybe. My point about this is, yes, Thumper is right. At a certain point, when you get generic enough or common enough, it's not so much stealing as a mythic basis, a potential form of story that many, many variations have already been done by. If you are working with one of those, go to it. Okay, no more questions, please. Nala, do you have any tips for how to come up with a fresh take on a story? I'm working on a horror anthology. The premise for one of the stories fell apart, but I want to keep the overall setting and institution. I keep generating ideas, but they are all cliche. How do I get my mind to give me more unique ideas? This is an interesting question. I have to tell you that my instinct would be make the cliche work. If you're coming up with ideas and they're cliched, first of all, everything has been done. Everything you can find some earlier or similar version of the thing you just thought of that's the coolest thing ever. Originality is not that important. If you are writing something that is cliched, but you can find a way to make it come alive, some interesting version of that cliche, go to it. Maybe the problem is you're thinking something has to be original beyond the originality of how you are doing it. There's many people tell stories about couples breaking up and coming back together. That doesn't mean there's no room for a new one. The question is, what about that story is going to be interesting that you are doing that you feel is powerful and authentic from you? Sometimes it's because, it's two people in a nursing home and they're 90 years old. Or, in past lives, two people who knew each other as kids then don't see each other for 30 years. It's not about being original. It's about being valuable because you are bringing something interesting to the basic things, and because you are providing your storytelling in an original way, or you're authentically interpreting and feeling it, trying to get people to see the characters in an original way. All of that would be absolutely fine. So my answer, Nala, would be, don't worry about it so much. Just do your thing as well as you can. Make it kick ass. You'll be fine. Ming says, as a first attempt to write a screenplay, would be okay to write a trash one just to learn the mechanics of the craft? Or is it better to push to start the best I can do from the start? I don't know anyone who doesn't write some trash. Yes, if you are happy and productive making it perfect before you advance, do it. If you are not productive or not happy, try the trash thing, write the bad version, and then start to work it. Everybody I know has to do that. The people I know who are making it perfect, they often don't get it done. But I'm not going to say that for some people it won't work. It may work for you, in which case, do it. Okay, no more questions, please. I'm gonna have to rush. Are there scientific facts writing 5 a.m. is the best? No, there are no scientific facts. Whatever works for you, whatever it is that you like to do, do it. As long as it's productive, not unhealthy, and not causing harm to those around you. Hello, Dominic. I am glad that you are here, even if you are late. I'm delighted to have you. Hello to Poland. Germany football. Do you advise us to attend the London Screenwriting Festival? $500 US to listen to 100 different screenwriters. The answer is, with anything that you have to pay for, I would advise you not to do it if you don't have that money to spend. If you don't want to put yourself into a financial crush to attend a meeting, to attend a class. You can do without. However, if you have the $500 and you are in or can get to London and you want to do it, great. Why not? You probably will hear a lot of cool, interesting things and a bunch of things you think are balderdash. That's okay. You can always hire, this is true, about the question of whether or not someone is offending by writing about a group otherwise. You can hire a sensitivity reader or pay for a consultancy. I would advise just passing it around to people you meet before I hired a professional consultant or sensitivity reader. However, if you want to do that, that's fine. if you have the money. Um, um, oh yes, ask questions. You can always catch these videos are available. If you came in late, you can always catch the rest, the reruns. Is it important to follow noun, verb, object, sentence construction, scene writing? No, no, it is not at all important. It is important to write interesting, entertaining, and valuable sentences as you define them. I believe in general, people who read scripts tend to like shorter sentences, clearer sentences. The exact order of words should not be a formula. In fact, no matter what, vary your sentence structure. If you've done a bunch of things where it's noun, verb, object, then do some where it's verb, just verb. Break it up, change it up. The most important thing is to not follow the same ritual every single sentence. Thanks, Dominic. I'm so glad. Okay, Imogen. Thanks for bringing this up, as I have a story I want to write but struggle with receiving pushback. Yeah, about pushback, I would say honestly, to me, it is very important to not spend a lot of time trying to calculate the result of your work. Do the best you can. At very worst, you won't get published or produced. You're probably not going to get published or produced anyway. You want to do something that you feel that you believe in. If you are trying to be respectful, sensitive, and understanding your place in the world and in the world of other writers, you're probably going to be okay. It's certainly worth exploring it. If you're hearing voices in your head that are saying, don't do that, it will be bad, you're probably hurting yourself. Those voices are very rarely helpful. Unless they say, don't do that, do this. If you have a voice in your head that says, don't, but doesn't say do another thing, that voice is just fear. If it is saying, in a choice, choose this, cool. That may be helpful. Okay. Okay. Okay, because Imogen is saying it's an important topic that they want to write to depict accurately and effectively. Well, then, in that case, do as much research as you can, and then try and write truthfully. Try and write the best you can. That's really the only thing that you can do anyway. Nishaj, Glenn's video on process might be beneficial. Yes, outlining. Yes, look at the process videos, the process section of this. There's a whole playlist called The Process, Being a Writer. I would strongly advise, please, if you are asking questions but you have not watched my lesson videos in those 3 playlists, the videos that are about 10 minutes long, those are the ones I'm going to have answered every question there. Okay. Is it dangerous to write a political thriller for my first script? No, I don't see why it would be. Unless you're writing about a specific political group that is currently threatening people, I would not do it. Hi, Adam Lum. I would not do it. I would not be afraid. I would not think it's dangerous. I would say political thriller seems like a perfectly fine thing to write. Germany Football Rocks. Do you think line-by-line editing services by professional screenwriters are helpful? If you can afford it and you have already written a script and you want to get it, just remember anybody's opinion is only an opinion. They are not right or wrong. When somebody says, this seems a little overly descriptive, other people might say, holy crap, that's great. So the answer is, if you feel like throwing away some money on a scriptwriter giving you advice, sure, as long as you recognize that that is simply their advice. If from that advice you might get something helpful, great. When I do this one-on-one stuff, I always try and make sure that people understand. I'm going to give you some thoughts, see if they help. It's not like I'm right or wrong. It's not like anybody knows. I'm just doing the best I can to give you my impressions. Bothered me that William Friedkin, yeah, it was deserved. Cruising is a homophobic movie by an extraordinarily talented, extraordinarily foolish and misguided and deranged filmmaker. Friedkin never really, except for The Exorcist, which was so well written, never made a movie that really made sense. Cruising has some absolutely awesome scenes and some incredibly cringeworthy scenes. Cruising is a bad movie in almost every way, but it's interesting and exciting as a capturing of a time and a place. But I do believe William Friedkin deserved flack. I don't believe the movie should be banned, but I do think anyone watching it would go, man, this guy has some confused feelings about gay life, and he shouldn't probably be making movies about it. I don't understand who is the protagonist in Fargo the movie. Marge. Marge is the protagonist of the movie. She's got the case and she's working on solving it. Marge, by the way, in Fargo is the police officer, the pregnant police officer. Should we write nude scenes in a horror movie? I feel super weird that the script I am helping rewrite, it's horror and the character, every time the character realizes she will be naked. It's kind of absurd. This is a good question on an interesting topic. The answer is gratuitous nudity? No. Try and take it out. See if you can rewrite the script. And if there is nudity because someone is vulnerable, and you're trying to emphasize that, if there is nudity because someone is in a sexual situation and you want to explore that, that's fine. Otherwise, no, there is no particular reason for your main character to be naked all the time, unless they're like a nudist. What ways did you find useful to assess your own strengths and weaknesses as a writer, and then to improve and sell more work? Well, very often my strengths and weaknesses have nothing to do for selling more work. I would really prioritize selling more work down. Do not spend a lot of time worrying about selling. Strengths and weaknesses as a writer, because the work is or is not achieving its artistic goals and your personal best. That's what I would say is you want to look for. And your strengths and weaknesses, what ways did I find useful? The main way is if I find something is like, I think it's great, and then I show it to people and they don't get it, I have to assess why is that not working. Sometimes I'm just trying to do something that's unusual and it's throwing people off. But usually when you do that, about 50% of the people love it and 50% hate it. If you're getting a 50-50 like that, you're probably doing something great. If you're getting 80%, you're probably just following a formula. So I would just say the ways I found useful is write a lot of stuff, show it to a lot of people, and pay attention to what they like and don't like, what they get and don't get. Sometimes people don't like it, but they get it. They'll say like, I didn't like that, but when they talk about the feelings or the ideas that they got from it, they understood it. Then you're good. Okay, word charm. I keep struggling with fleshing out my supporting cast. I don't have that issue with the main cast. However, with supporting, they're either too flat or too unique, distracting. I need a large supporting cast. I wish I knew a way to maybe come up with group characters as a starting point, then bind them to make them. I wouldn't do the group thing. I would watch this video. Well, there's two of them. One, definitely this one on character. Because the truth is, if they're a supporting character, they only have a little bit of time. They're only going to have one or two characteristics. There's just not going to be that much room. If they are distracting, tone them down. But the main thing I would say is look at this one, building character arcs. Because my feeling is, even with your supporting cast, the trick is to make them come alive and be living their own life within your story. If you do that, you're great. If that is too interesting, tone it down. But it's still better to tone down an interesting thing than try and present an uninteresting thing. The answer really is look at how much time they have. They probably only have a couple of scenes. If they only have a couple of scenes, they're only going to get to do a couple of things. So if you outline just their story, you'll say, okay, they've only got 3 or 4 scenes. They only can do 1 or 2 things. Let me think of some good 1 or 2 things, And then you're good. You're gold. You're all good. Okay. Please, no more questions. I cannot answer any more questions. We are way over time. Do you have any advice for twists? Yes. Yeah, I sure do. Reveals, twists. I'm asking more of a mindset on how to think of a story to keep it different from what readers might expect. Every twist and turn is unexpected. Well, remember, not every twist and turn should be unexpected. But I did a whole video called Plot Twists where I talk about this. And also, really important, this concept, revelation, which I think is what you're talking about. So if you look at those two videos, I think you'll get a lot of tips on this topic, Ellie. Thank you for asking. It's a good question. And my answers are all in there. But excellent question. Plot twists and revelation, those two videos, it's about 20 minutes of everything I know on that topic. Okay. Thank you very much. Saying goodbye. Hi, Violet Rain. You are so welcome. I am so glad you guys are all here. I can't believe everyone is. I'll see you all in September. Okay. I see a lot of thank yous. Thank you. Okay. Friedkin's Sorcerer is, once again, with all of Friedkin's film, French Connection, everything except the Exorcist, I would say they are masterpieces of directing. They are, Friedkin is, especially early Friedkin, one of the most extraordinarily gifted and rich and textured, coolest directors in the world. Storytelling-wise, character insight-wise, not great. And so therefore it depends a lot on his script. I love Sorcerer, but it's actually pretty shallow. It doesn't really get much into these people. They are kind of just cliches in the grip of a phenomenal story. But the story itself is mainly just cool set pieces, beautifully filmed. That's my take on Friedkin. I just think Friedkin is one of those directors who's great at directing, but unless he has really good material, he directs okay. I mean, like the movies they're problematic, but powerful. That, Oliver Stone also, he's another one. These are people who, there's a lot of people who can make a cool movie, but they don't have their heads together in the thinking part. Okay. David Wright says, I'm considering doing a sci-fi fantasy script based on the Renaissance and Protestant Reformation, but as Nietzsche would have preferred where Luther dies and the church prevails. Is it a good idea? Okay, my take on all ideas is this. It sounds interesting to me. Yeah. Is it a good idea in that it is commercial? Iffy. Is it any idea is a question of what are you going to do with it? How are you going to make it accessible, interesting, provocative, powerful, whatever it is you're trying to make it? Your idea certainly is like, I sat up and took notice. I'm like, I want to see that. Also, when you say sci-fi fantasy, I'm curious what the sci-fi part of it is, because the fantasy, the idea of an alternative story of historical events, that is interesting. Who's the main character? What's the story? That's what I would say. It certainly is an interesting idea, it's an interesting topic. It isn't a story yet as I understand it. So therefore, my answer would be yes, make it a good story as well. How much of the notes of my manager should I take seriously? That's a tricky one. If you want to keep your manager, you should take them pretty seriously. How well do you communicate with your manager? If you communicate and you can say, like, I hear you on this, but for this reason, I am not doing it. And if they can live with that, and they may tell you, okay, the price of that is we can't take it to X, Y, and Z companies. We can only take it to Lee's. You guys work that out. You people work that out. However, in general, you want to take what they say seriously in the sense that you want to think about it. It doesn't mean you have to do what they say. If they are saying you have to do what I say, that's a problematic situation. You can either decide to stay with the manager and do what they say, because that's the deal, or don't stay with the manager and then you don't have to do what they say. That's the trick. Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. Hi, Matthew. I gotta go. Question for the writing community here, Crystal. Hi, Crystal. When do these Q&As take place? I know the answer to that. I can tell you. Every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, except in the month of August. Not doing it this month. Coming up, 4 weeks off. However, starting in September, see you September 4th, I will be back every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Some days I do more of a topic that I've chosen. Some days I throw it open to questions. I always try and answer some questions. So the answer is any Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's when I am here. Okay. Yes, it was an English remake of another really great film called Wages of Fear, black and white French film. Both great, very different. Okay. Story is the character. No, I would say fate is the character. Fate is different from story. Okay. Take a break. I assume not a beak. Okay. And then Dominic's last question. Is this idea any good? It's all in the execution. Medieval execution? Probably. Good joke. Okay. All right, everybody. It was great to see you. Thank you so much. I will see you in September, as I said. In the meantime, please stay cool, stay hydrated, take good care of yourself, and go write something.